Faults of Fools by K.D. Blackburn. Chapter 3, Scenes 3 and 4. Don't worry, she'll get over it, Eileen quietly told Thaddeus as he stooped to gather her suitcases at Kimberly's front door. With her uncombed hair caught in a barrette, Kimberly was weeping like her life's good were being repossessed by Scrooge. Toby, wrapped tightly in a blanket resting against his mother's shoulder, was unmoved by the performance. Melodramatic, even a bit stagey. It seemed to Thaddeus that Toby's grandmother wasn't greatly impressed with the performance either. My family called her Sarah Bernhardt when she was little. You know, the great dramatic actress from the turn of the century. The last one, that is, Eileen clarified as she glanced around for almost forgotten items. There were none. With perhaps a little more effort than required, Eileen cinched tight the belt on her black leather coat. She slung her purse over her shoulder. Handing a slip of paper to Kimberly, she explained that this was her new address. Specifically, and with emphasis added, she informed her daughter that this was Thaddeus's phone number, written there, not her own. After bending her orange head to plant a kiss on the baby's equally orange head, Eileen leaned forward and pursed her lips for her daughter to plant one right there, which Kimberly dutifully did, sniffing significantly just in case her mother would recant at the last moment. Kimberly had ignored the Sarah Bernhardt comment, like always. She waved a tearful goodbye before the closing of the front door. On the whole, the scene made Thaddeus feel like shit. I noticed when she was 2 years old that she could actually make the tears spring from her tear ducts instead of just drip out like the rest of us. Eileen continued as he put the bags in the back of the blazer. If they ever award a gold medal for crying, my girl is a shoo-in. As usual, she was smiling. No tear stains were in evidence as far as he could tell. Eileen apparently wanted to talk about the good parts of her mother and daughter relationship. Thaddeus was truly interested, even if what he'd seen so far didn't jibe with what she was saying. He held up his half of the conversation all the way to his house. And by the time he braked the car to a halt, she had decided he lived in a tree overhanging the last bit of earth on Troy Hill, because that was almost where the car came to a rest. His place, and now hers, was the last in a long, narrow lane of shoulder-to-shoulder ancient little houses. The cracked ribbon of a city sidewalk petered out at his front step. At first glance, it looked to her as if the house was perched on the edge of a cliff. Leave the stuff in the car for a minute, he began as soon as he cut the engine. There's something I want to show you first. Many years ago, the side yard had subsided to about 15 feet below street level, he explained, as he led her through a gate and down a set of zigzag wooden steps into the sun-blocked, sunken yard. A large wooden deck loomed above their heads, creating deep shadows. Eileen was rather glad he had taken her arm as they trooped along the exposed foundation of the house. They stopped at the chain-link fence. Does this remind you of anything? He asked. Rodkiny, she exclaimed, and now she knew why he loved the view from the parapet of Prague's castle. The resemblance between the districts of Hrodkiny in Prague and Troy Hill in Pittsburgh was clear. A high-walled maze with no view but the sky above until you get to the edge. There the world falls steeply away into a broad river plain with a glowing city on the opposite low plain. In the golden city of Prague, the gilded domes gleam in the evening light. In Pittsburgh, she saw it was the illumination of the skyscrapers in the Golden Triangle that did the trick. With hands stuffed in pockets against the chill, the two quietly enjoyed the view he never grew tired of, and she loved on first sight. In due time, he offered a tour of his own castle on the hill. Letting them into the house through the basement door, he employed different keys for different locks like a warder. On his fingers finding the light switch, the basement filled with high wattage, instant brightness, compounded by a custom-made mirror covering the opposite wall. Well, it's not a matter of vanity, I assure you. It's just that I spend a lot of time down here, he explained as he waved his hand around the private gymnasium. I found I need the added light from the mirror or I get kind of crotchety. You have more equipment down here than the Czech national team, she kidded. Is that a sauna I see over in the corner? Eileen loved saunas, and he told her it was hers to use. The house tour on the first floor was decidedly quick. The original floor plan had rooms no larger than 9 by 12. He'd knocked down a couple of short walls to change the proportions. The present living room was shallow and as long as the house was broad. Kitchen, bedroom, and bath rounded out the living space, all on a small scale. Except for the wooden deck suspended off the side of the house, hovering over a good chunk of the sunken yard. That was almost as wide as the house and ran the length of it. The second floor was munchkin-sized. Slanted ceilings, one gable per room to let in natural light. The 2 rooms were spick and span with fresh paint, the borrowed furniture nicely arranged. Thaddeus had nearly killed himself to get it all done by Sunday. He left Eileen to check out her new home. Satisfied with enough with what she had agreed to, sight unseen, this felt like a good move, she decided. I'll make us some dinner to celebrate your coming. Then we can work out the rest of the details, he said as he deposited her suitcase in her bedroom a few minutes later. Working out the details of living at close quarters is important. They both knew that from experience. Life in the Zavodny household on Pariska and Yosifov, the Jewish quarter, was a veritable ballet of working details. Mr. and Mrs. Zavodny had a very spacious apartment. It just happened to be filled at any one time with at least 7 adults and a few children. Eileen had rented a room from them for her entire 3-year stay. Thaddeus had only been there for 3 months. He'd had to learn the ins and outs of communal living quickly. Cultural missteps can breed disasters, but being completely at home in the Czech language had been an invaluable asset for both. After dinner, their list of working details lay on a yellow legal pad on the kitchen table. At first glance, it looked like living together was going to be a breeze, at least when they compared memories of the controlled chaos generated by a household of Czechs living life con brio. When he had first arrived in Prague, he had been under the impression, the Western one, that folks behind the Iron Curtain lead humorless lives of sullen desperation. What a crock that had turned out to be. The zest for life may be subdued somewhat on the street of spying eyes. At home, however, it ain't necessarily so. The kitchen phone was ringing as Thaddeus came out of his bedroom in his exercise clothes. Eileen was halfway down the stairs when he answered it. She had thought it might be Kimberly checking up on her already. Irritation set her lips in a stiff line by the time she rounded into the kitchen. It was clear by Thaddeus' expression that the call was for him, and the news was serious. Eileen opted to walk quietly back up to her rooms. Naturally, his side of the conversation was all she could hope to hear, and so far he wasn't doing any of the talking. Instead of hello, Anna Maria had led off with, "I've phoned her doctor already. She said I should be patient. She'll make room to see Elena in the morning." Compared to the usual tones coming out of his raspy-throated sister, Thaddeus gauged that she was at a nearly hysterical level of distress. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, he finally wedged in. "Have you eaten? I can bring something with me." "I'm too upset to think about food," she barked. Nervous energy alone could have carried her until the next morning easily. "Yeah? Well, how about Elena?" The question focused Anna Maria's attention a bit. She'd forgotten that a sick Elena wouldn't bother to eat. "Bring something, anything, I don't care what." In the few minutes it took Thaddeus to get back into his street clothes, Eileen had made sandwiches out of what she found in the refrigerator. "I made 4, she shrugged. "I didn't know how many you might need." Help your friends when they need you is one of the unwritten things on the list of working details for living at close quarters. Don't mind their business is on there too. Eileen chose to obey both directives. Thaddeus found his sisters in the kitchen. Anna Maria was crashing things around to make coffee, with the most likely outcome being broken glass. Elena was sitting with a newspaper in front of her and a cup of truly cold coffee at her elbow. When Maria had extended her hand, indicating she wanted Elena to rise from the recliner in the parlor, a gesture hoped never to be used again, Elena had obeyed, and then sat in her usual kitchen chair as directed. I've read every item on that page, Anna Maria gestured with her coffee filter in hand. I can't see a single here that might have caused this. Damn. For the life of me, I can't think how much coffee to put in this stupid thing. 6, Elena said. But that was all she said. 6 level teaspoons of ground coffee went jerkily into the paper filter. The water gauge showed 10 cups. Pale, muddy water slowly filled the glass carafe. The 3 siblings sat in tableau, overwhelmed at the outcome of mysterious events. In itself, Elena's kitchen could be a bit overwhelming to the unprepared. The walls were white, as were the cabinets, the floor, and the table and the chairs. All of the built-in appliances were black. Everything else came in hunter green. The baker's rack, the trash can, the ceiling fan, the wall clock, the casual dinnerware, even the pots and pans. Everything, that is, except for those items which were covered in English ivy. Pots of real and silk ivy hung in a dozen places. The curtains had an all-over ivy print, so did the placemats and the tied-on chair cushions. An intertwining border of ivy had been stenciled by Elena around the walls and the windows. The Sissic excess, latch onto an idea, hold tight. A few decades ago, for more than 3 years, Elena had sat in a lazy-boy recliner in front of a turned-on television, with her hair combed and her shoes on. She'd been in her early 30s then and in good physical health. Due to Jan and Alsbetta's age, Frank had decided she was to home with them after her time in Steubenville. Anna Maria made the maids' quarters into a private parlor and filled it with Elena's treasures from her bedroom in their parents' home. Each day of those years, Frank had made sure his sister-in-law was fed and in her easy chair before he went off to work. At noon, Mama showed up to serve lunch to her high-functioning, semi-catatonic daughter. At the end of each day, Anna Maria tucked her preternaturally docile sister into a bed in a room down the hall from her own. If any part of the ritual was omitted, Elena could be found in whatever state she had been before the error. And so it had gone, until one spring day, Anna Maria had come home from work to find her sister missing. She'd done a panic sweep of the whole house before locating her standing in the backyard, coatless arms at her side, face blandly still, but having moved from the confines of the room off the kitchen, over the threshold, and onto the outside earth by her own volition. At Frank's insistence, the pair let her remain rooted to the spot until they were sure she'd catch her death in the evening cool. After work the following day, they found Elena in the recliner, but blossoms from the backyard lilac bush were in a glass of water sitting atop the television. A call to Mama revealed the cut flowers had not been there at lunchtime. For the next 30 or so summers, the backyard had been worthy of a garden magazine spread. As Elena progressed through her second spring, Anna Maria and her husband catered to her. They granted her every wish. She had few. It was Elena who appointed herself as housekeeper, not them. For the past decades, she led a life devoted to her family, circumscribed by the wrought iron fence that surrounded the house. Aside from the flower garden, she developed only 2 deep interests, bingo and coupon collecting. Like the yard, she was highly successful in getting both to be productive. When Anna Maria had come home on the evening of January 4, she had expected to find supper waiting. Elena played bingo on Monday nights. The cooking was normally done by early in the afternoon. Instead, Anna Maria had found her sister sitting in the newer lazy boy and had no idea why this time. Thaddeus was young the last time. No one told him why. This time he was old enough, but he still didn't know why. The three of them ate his sandwiches in Elena's kitchen. They asked Elena what happened, where she went today, every question the two of them could think of. In response, Elena chewed her sandwich and drank her coffee. She went through all the motions of life, including answering a few simple questions, but she wouldn't say why she had shut herself off again. Anna Maria found the check for $25,000 in Elena's purse. It was drawn on a law office's account, and the signature was unreadable. The two of them were more confused than ever. The phone at the law office went unanswered, and at 11, Thaddeus went home after making sure Elena was tucked in bed. Sleep eluded Anna Maria. Years ago, she had taken care of her younger sister because she felt she owed it to her. For years now, Elena had taken care of her, whether she wanted it or not. She tussled with the question of who owned whom what for half the night. When the two women showed up at the doctor's office in the morning, it was Anna Maria who looked like the emotional wreck. To consume cigarettes any faster, she would have had to chew them. She'd already talked to Alexander Kerr, the lawyer whose name was on the check. She wasn't confused any longer on that point. Nearly apoplectic with rage, and so loudly that he had to hold the phone away from his ear, Anna Maria had cursed Paul Jenser, his life, death, and progeny. What she hadn't done was tell Kerr anything that might clear up some of the mystery. Dr. Biniecki checked Elena's vital signs, talked to her, asked her to count backwards by sevens from 100, and wanted to know who was president. Out of earshot of her sister, she said, among other things, 93, 86, 79, 72, 65, 58, and named the man in question. With Anna Maria back in the room doing a fine portrayal of a crazy woman, Elena was a cigar store Indian, mute and immobile. The doctor wrote prescriptions for both of them to take.